Breaking news from the LA Kings involving the way you will see and hear Kings games on TV in the future. That's next on this edition of Locked on LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, thanks for making Locked on LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of this show. And of course, we're on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. At last check, we were at 1,791 subscribers, and our streak of 7 straight months of getting at least 100 subscribers per month did come to an end. But it was a great run. Thank you to all who have liked and subscribed in the past. We still have a goal of 2,000 subscribers before the start of next season. I'm confident with your help, we can make that happen. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked on LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast. It's a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 16 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for 30 years. Hope you had a great weekend. Coming up on this show, we were going to continue our breakdown of an LA Kings player with a player profile, but that has been put on hold because of the breaking news involving the LA Kings. It involves how you will be watching LA Kings games going forward, and a big name that will no longer be a part of the LA Kings TV broadcast. Plus, we've got some prospect news, including Brandt Clarke news, which I failed to get to on our Friday show. But first, major announcement by the LA Kings on Monday. Alex Faust is out as Kings TV play-by-play man. Here is the official LA Kings press release, word for word. Due to current events and ever-changing dynamics surrounding the broadcasting landscape, the LA Kings will transition to a singular broadcast team across television and radio, beginning with the 2023-24 season. Nick Nixon will serve as club play-by-play man, announcer, along with Jim Fox as analyst. They'll be joined by Daryl Evans as an on-air personality for simulcasts. Additional roles will be announced at a later date. As a result of this new strategy and structure, the organization has informed Alex Faust that unfortunately his contract as television play-by-play announcer will not be renewed. It is set to expire on June the 30th of 2023. The LA Kings sincerely thank Alex Faust for representing the organization and our community with dignity and class over the last 6 years. Alex is an extremely talented and passionate broadcaster with a bright future in the NHL and sports as a whole. We wish him the utmost success in the years ahead. They continued, we welcome Nick Nixon and Daryl Evans to their latest roles and look forward to their continued contributions and expertise. Along with Jim Fox, the veteran trio will form the core of an experienced and formidable broadcast team that will serve our audience well. The organization currently has no information on a future rights partnership or distribution agreement. Additional broadcast details will be announced prior to the 2023-24 season. So again, that was the LA Kings press release from earlier today, word for word. As for what Alex Faust had to say on his Twitter account, word for word, he said, "Last week, the LA Kings informed me that my contract will not be renewed for next season. As many of you are no doubt aware, the regional sports TV business is in serious distress, and Los Angeles is one of the many markets affected. The team is currently without a TV rights holder partner for next season, and I was told my role was a casualty of the current climate. I truly appreciate how the city and fans in Los Angeles welcomed me with open arms into their homes for the last 6 years. I will deeply miss working with my great friend Jim Fox and our wonderful TV crew. With gratitude, Alex." And finally, this was Jim Fox with his response to what's going on with the LA Kings TV broadcasts on his Twitter account, word for word. He said, "Alex Faust was a pleasure to work with, and I learned a lot from Alex and appreciate all he has done for the LA Kings. Alex's skill is obvious and world-class, best calls, a bright future lies ahead. A new chapter begins, and with my respect for Daryl and Nick, it goes without saying, but it is difficult saying goodbye to a very talented man." Okay, if you've been paying attention to what's been going on with the regional sports networks, this may not come as a surprise, although the Alex Faust news is shocking to me. We'll get more into that in a minute. If you haven't been paying attention to what's been going on, the question for you, and if you have or haven't paid attention, is how will this affect you as a Kings fan? Because It's much bigger than just who is the person calling the games. Now, you may not remember, but I mentioned in a previous episode later in the regular season that the regional sports networks were in financial distress, as was mentioned in the comments by Alex Faust and the LA Kings, specifically Bally Sports Network. Now, the company that owns Bally Sports, the Sinclair Sports Group, filed for bankruptcy. I said that this wouldn't affect the Kings for the end of the regular season, but it could affect the Kings going forward, and it could affect baseball season as well if you were a baseball fan, not a Dodgers fan. So likely the most important about all this for you, again, is how are you going to be able to watch Kings games on TV next season, and what will it cost you? Now, the answer to those questions, as was alluded to in the Kings press release, is to be determined. Now, I've heard that some games could be made available over the air locally, something like a Channel 13 if you live in the LA area that you might be familiar with. It's certainly possible there, and likely, I think, that there could be some sort of streaming service. We'll have more on that in a second. There will still be games in places like ESPN, ESPN Plus, TNT, and perhaps the NHL themselves will be having an expanded center ice package for those of you that have been subscribers to that in the past. In the past, that did not include local broadcasts. It was only out of area markets. But considering what's going on now, I think those probably would be expanded to include your local teams. Now, this is affecting most of the NHL, some NBA, and Major League Baseball teams as well. Now, you may have heard recently, last few days, within the last week at least, that the Bally Sports San Diego network stopped paying the San Diego Padres in baseball the money that was owed to them. And the Padres ended up pulling their games off of Bally Sports. And I believe it was through this weekend you could watch the games for free streaming on the website. Major League Baseball offered something as well. But I believe starting today, you now have to pay $20 a month to watch the San Diego Padres, whether that's streaming or through your local cable company or what have you. So Major League Baseball has taken over the Padres broadcast for now, and it's likely this is going to have a domino effect on a lot of the other broadcasts as well. And it makes sense that this would also be coming soon for teams like the LA Kings, as well as the Ducks, Clippers, and Angels, and many other teams across sports. So this is obviously a very, very big deal. It's important to you, obviously, because you as a consumer now has to decide how you're going to spend your entertainment dollars. I know, speaking for me personally, we are about to cut the cord. I know a lot of you have probably done that already. We've been DirecTV customers for at least 20 years, and mostly because of the NFL Sunday Ticket. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so the only way I can watch all my team's games is to pay the Sunday Ticket. Well, that's not going to be available anymore on DirecTV. It's now going to YouTube TV. And as a result, we are getting rid of our DirecTV after years and years and years, and we're switching over to YouTube TV. Now, we also have HBO Max, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Apple TV. So even though we're losing one, we still have a bunch of other things, and we'll have to pay whatever comes from the LA Kings. I mean, I'm going to have to pay for it. I'm doing this show. I got to see the games. So it adds up, as you well know. So decisions are going to have to be made. Maybe we get rid of some of our other streaming services as well. Maybe we just do it during hockey season. I don't know how it's going to work out for me. I don't know how it's going to work out for you. But again, decisions are going to have to be made going forward as things are changing. Now, is it possible some big corporation could come riding in on a white horse and save the regional sports networks? It's possible, but extremely unlikely that is going to happen. And let's be honest, if you're paying attention to, broadcast in sports, this is kind of where it's moving as well. The NFL announced that it will have a playoff game exclusively streamed this season. You will only be able to watch it by watching it on a stream that you have to pay for. So this is the future of sports, and streaming and all that kind of stuff is the future. So I guess in some weird way, maybe this is pushing the NHL and baseball and some NBA markets as well, kind of into this area. But like I said, as far as you as a Kings fan, you will be able to get the games, but exactly how, where, and how much it's going to cost, that is still to be determined. And this is big news involving not just you as a consumer. This is big news involving the Los Angeles Kings, as well as other teams and the NHL as a whole. Now, especially the NHL. Look, the NFL has these incredibly lucrative TV deals. They get paid billions of dollars. They're fine. But the other leagues, especially like the NHL, whose TV packages aren't quite as lucrative, this can affect the salary cap. This can affect how much revenue teams are going to make, how much revenue the league's going to make, and how much money teams are going to be having to spend, and whether they'll be looking to spend that money or not. So this is a big issue, league wide, sports wide. It's not just about how you watch the games, but about how the revenue is coming in as well, because TV is the big engine that drives the revenue in sports. Yes, it's important to go to games. Yes, it's important to buy merchandise and that kind of stuff, but ultimately it's TV that is paying for the salaries. And this will affect, like I said, the NHL, individual teams, the players. So this is it's a much bigger than just how we're going to watch the games. But for you specifically, yes, it's going to be a decision to have to be made, how you're going to spend your money, where you're going to see the games, that kind of type of thing as well. I do have some thoughts on Alex Faust and the move to Nick Nixon on the TV side, and we will discuss that in a second. But first, I want to remind you today's episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Add your vehicle to the My Garage and look for the green check mark to know the part will fit or your money back, because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. And when you shop at eBay Motors with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, as someone who works in the sports media business, obviously you hate to see things happen like people losing their jobs. I have a personal friend, Jake Warner, who was the LA Kings radio engineer, who unfortunately has been a casualty of today's news as well. Best of luck and shout out to Big Brother Jake. I've been in this business a long time. I understand the realities of the business, but it still sucks to see people lose their jobs, obviously. As for Alex Faust specifically, as a Kings fan, that news hit me like the Kings can't afford to pay Alex Faust. The Los Angeles Kings can't afford to pay, I should say, a top level television play-by-play announcer. Really? Now, I don't know what he was making, but you look at the pecking order of professional sports teams in Los Angeles. Obviously, the Dodgers and Lakers are the clear 1-2. And you can debate who's 1 and who's 2, but those are the top 2, right? They've got their own networks, so that tells you all you need to know. And maybe I'm biased, but I thought the Kings would be kind of number 3. They've been here longer than the Clippers. Obviously, they're more embraced because there's another basketball team in town that's much more embraced. You've got the MLS teams, but that's, they're bigger than those teams, even though one of them just won a title. The Kings won multiple Stanley Cups, and they've been here a lot longer than a lot of these other teams. And this news that the Kings are unwilling to pay for a top-level TV play-by-play announcer, it feels very small time to me. And maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm letting my personal feelings get in the way for how big the Kings are in this market, in this city. But it just feels small time. It would have been a move that I would expect from some of those other teams. Personally, I think Alex Faust did an amazing job for the LA Kings. He had huge shoes to fill following legendary voice Bob Miller, and I thought he did it as well as could be expected. There is more of a loss for the Kings, frankly, than for Alex Faust. When you look at this, he is a rising star in this industry. I will be shocked if he doesn't get a job very soon with another team or with another network. He did call some games nationally this year. He's done college football in the past. I would not be surprised to see him doing games on network TV, ESPN, TNT in the near future. I also wouldn't be shocked to see him calling NFL games in the near future. He's that good. So the good news, I guess, for Alex Faust is he's not going to be out of a job for long. He's a very talented guy. But like I said, I think the Kings are lesser for not having a rising star in this industry being a part of the LA Kings broadcast. That's very disappointing. But again, Alex Faust will fall up. He will not be falling down after he leaves the LA Kings. Now, that said, the Kings broadcasts going forward with Nick Nixon and Jim Fox will still be excellent. Nick Nixon is a Hall of Fame broadcaster. He has done TV work before back in the day. His calls will be a bit more different because this is going to be a simulcast. He'll be doing both the radio and the TV, so it'll be a little more descriptive in what's going on, even though you can see the action. And I said when Bob Miller retired, I thought Nick Nixon should have been promoted to take over for Bob Miller and that the Kings should go out and hire a new radio guy. That didn't happen, and it was fine because I thought Alex Faust was great. But I think the Kings TV broadcasts are in very good hands with a Hall of Famer and a longtime pro like Nick Nixon. Obviously, Jim Fox will still be in his same role as an excellent analyst for the Kings. And I would guess that Daryl Evans, who was the radio color analyst and has been a contributor on the TV broadcast as well, will be some sort of, down on the ice reporter doing the intermission in between periods, things like that. Unfortunately, this news probably does mean that people like friend of the show, Patrick O'Neill, Carlin Baith, they likely will be out of a job. I don't know that that's official, but I could see that happening. As far as Jarrett Stoll, he does work in the Kings organization in the player development department, so he still has a job. Maybe he will help out on those broadcasts as well, since he's already still kind of part of the Kings family. But, like I said, the quality of the broadcasts should still be very, very good. I think the Kings are in good hands when it comes to Nick Nixon, Jim Fox, and Daryl Evans. But like I said, letting Alex Faust go and then having to simulcast the games, it feels like small time to me. I could definitely see some smaller market teams going to something like that, but this is the Los Angeles Kings. I didn't see this coming. I thought the Kings were a little bit bigger than this, but disappointing news. Again, Nick Nixon will do a great job. It'll still be quality as far as the broadcast, but it just kind of disappointing that the Kings can't pay for a top-level TV broadcaster, or at least they're unwilling to. We do have some prospect news that I want to pass along, including some news on Brandt Clarke that I had intended to share on last Friday's show. We'll get to that in a minute, but thank you for watching and listening to this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, after you listen and watch this show, you should check out Locked On NHL for all the latest going-ons in the National Hockey League. Vegas Golden Knights won Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. Florida Panthers are looking to get a split tonight, head home for Game number 3. Hopefully that happens. Plus, there's NHL coaching news. We're going to mention that in a second, and a lot more going on in the NHL. So to keep up to date on all the Stanley Cup playoff action and everything else going on in the NHL, check out Locked On NHL. It's your daily show on all the latest things going on in the National Hockey League. That is Locked On NHL, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Now, I like to keep you guys updated on any major news involving the Kings Pacific Division rivals. And there is news on those Quackers to the south. The Ducks have hired a new head coach. The Anaheim Ducks announcing that Greg Cronin is their new head coach. They did that earlier today, by the way. No relation to Mick Cronin, the UCLA men's basketball coach, in case you're wondering. Greg Cronin was a coach for the Colorado Avalanche as far as their AHL affiliate. This will be his first ever head coaching job of any kind. He's 60 years old, spent 5 years with the Colorado Eagles, guiding them to the playoffs 4 times. He previously coached in the AHL for the New York Islanders organization, and also is known for his player development and worked with the U.S. national development team. So that makes sense. The Ducks are a young rebuilding team. They want a young, well, he's not young, but as far as NHL experience, a younger type coach who has a development background to try and mold these young players together into a competitive NHL team. That wasn't the case last season when Dallas Eakins was coaching the team. He was there for 4 years. They were the worst team in the NHL last year with the Anaheim Ducks. So I guess nowhere to go it up for the Ducks. Not that we want to see that. But again, Greg Cronin the new head coach of the Anaheim Ducks. We have some prospects news to pass along, and all credit to the crew over at Mayor's Manor for this. Kings 2019 draft pick goalie Lucas Perrick decided not to. Well, he didn't decide. The Kings decided not to sign him. The 4-year window for them to sign him to a contract expired. He's now an unrestricted free agent. This isn't a surprise because Perrick, who was a 3rd-round pick for the Kings in 2019, wasn't even playing in the Kings organization anymore. He had a brief stint in Ontario, but last year was playing in the Avalanche organization. The Kings did still own his rights, and that expired on June the 1st, so now he is officially a free agent. So goalie Lucas Perrick, 3rd-round pick in 2019, no longer a part of the Kings organization. John Hoven over there at Mayor's Manor also reporting that it looks like the Kings development camp will open around July 5th in El Segundo. Defenseman Otto Salin from Finland, a Kings 5th-round pick in 2022, is expected to attend his first development camp, as is fellow Finn forward Kasper Simon-Tabel. He was a 3rd-round pick of the Kings in 2020. So looking forward to development camp because that was right when I took over doing this show. So that'll be a year anniversary for me as your host of Locked on LA Kings when the Kings development camp gets going in early July. And finally, to the Kings' top prospect, Brandt Clarke. I apologize for running out of time on our Friday show to get to this, but it's worth the wait. Brandt Clarke was named to the Canadian Hockey League first-team All-Star after posting 61 points, 23 goals, and 38 assists in 31 games last season for the Barrie Colts. Clarke led all skaters as a defenseman with 1.97 points per game on average, the second best mark by a defenseman in OHL history. That's the Ontario Hockey League. His 23 goals ranked 4th among OHL defensemen. Now, it's possible had Clarke played the entire season in the OHL instead of having his some time with the Kings and then the Reign and then the World Juniors, he could have scored 100 points at the junior level this year. That was very realistic based on the numbers he put up in his brief time playing in the Ontario Hockey League. He also had 23 points in 12 playoff games. We are going to do a feature on Brandt Clarke at some time before the season starts, but we are all very justified in being excited about Brandt Clarke on the LA Kings next season. This guy has got a lot of hype around him, but I think he's absolutely worth the hype. I think he's going to live up to the hype. I think he's going to be an elite level NHL defenseman for the LA Kings and provide them with some offensive scoring touch from the blue line that they haven't had in quite some time. So the plan for Brandt Clarke is still yet to be determined. But again, based on what he did in his brief time with the Kings, what he did in training camp last year, I would be very surprised personally if he is not on the LA Kings opening night roster. Now, there is still some moves to possibly be made. We know that there's a long line of right shot defensemen that the Kings have, too many, frankly, and that those types of players are in demand. We've talked about it. Maybe Jordan Spence, Sean Dursey, those kind of guys could bring back some decent return and also free up some cap space for the Kings. It makes too much sense for them not to do that. Could it come down before the draft? Will it be after? That remains to be seen. But Brandt Clarke is ready and waiting to contribute to the LA Kings, I think, next season. But there are moves to be made, I think, to also open up a spot for him as well, and some other things for the Kings in the process as well. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked on LA Kings every day, coming up on tomorrow's show, we're either going to have a player evaluation or a NHL draft feature. We are 23 days away from the NHL draft, so either a player feature or a draft feature coming up tomorrow. We are going to be joined, at least we're scheduled to be joined, by the Kings Storian on Wednesday's show. If you are on Twitter, you likely know about his tweets. If you're not, he has a Twitter account where every day he tweets out this day in Kings history, and there's a lot of cool things he's been tweeting out lately, because the Kings are, this is about the time they've been winning their Stanley Cups or big games in the past in the playoffs. Looking forward to hearing from him. Obviously, he's going to have some perspective on Kings history, but that will be very, very cool. So again, on Wednesday's show, the Kings Storian will be joining us fresh off his honeymoon, from what I understand. So that's very cool, as well as we get more fan interaction here on Locked on LA Kings. Also, like I said, we're going to have another player feature or draft feature as well on Thursday. And then, of course, on Friday's show will be our weekly fan feedback show. Would love to get your thoughts on the Kings letting Alex Faust go, on news on the regional sports networks, how they're going to affect how you watch games. Are you going to be paying for an extra streaming service if it comes to that? How much would you be willing to pay? How is this going to affect you as a Kings fan? The email address, as always, and get those emails in as early as you want, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE, lockedoneddie@gmail.com. Love to get for you to stay connected with the show as well while we're not broadcasting. Follow us on Twitter. If you're following us on Twitter, you have known all about what was going on today with the LA Kings and retweeting all the stuff from the Kings and Alex Faust and Jim Fox. We would love to have you stay connected with the show by following us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.